You checked your blood sugar this morning and the number was higher than it should have been. Again. And you did everything right yesterday. You were careful about what you ate, you went to bed at a reasonable hour, you took your medication exactly as prescribed. And still, that number stared back at you like an accusation. You sat there for a moment wondering what you missed, what you did wrong, whether your body is simply beyond the point where anything you do actually matters anymore. Here is what your doctor has never told you, and what the diabetes management industry spends millions of dollars making sure you never find out. The food you have been told is safe for diabetics, the food that appears on nearly every approved list, the food you may have eaten this very morning believing you were doing the right thing, is triggering a blood sugar response in your aging body that is completely different from what it triggers in a younger person. And eggs are at the center of this misunderstanding. What I am going to show you in this video is not about whether eggs are good or bad. That debate is over, and it is the wrong question entirely. The real question, the one that will actually change your morning numbers, is how you are eating them, when you are eating them, and what you are eating them with. Because a 2022 study published in the journal Nutrients found that the same egg, prepared two different ways, produced a blood sugar spike difference of up to 40% in adults over 60 with type 2 diabetes. Same egg, 40% difference. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the last thing I share is the preparation method that the pharmaceutical industry has the least interest in you knowing about. If you have ever checked your blood sugar after what felt like a here is your complete morning egg protocol, and I want you to treat this like the private consultation it is. When you wake up, before you eat anything, drink 1 full glass of room temperature water with half a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. This single step has been shown in a 2018 study published in the Journal of Functional Foods to reduce post-meal blood sugar response by up to 20% by improving insulin sensitivity in the first digestive window of the day. Then, within 30 minutes of waking, you prepare 2 eggs, soft-boiled or gently poached, never fried in refined oil, never scrambled in butter at high heat. You eat the egg first, completely. Then any non-starchy vegetable you enjoy, spinach, tomato, cucumber. Then, and only then, if you choose to include a carbohydrate, you eat it last and you keep it to 1 small portion of whole grain only. That sequence, that preparation, that timing, practiced consistently every single morning, is what Ronald and Sylvia and dozens of my patients have used to reclaim control over numbers they had been told were simply the reality of their condition. When you visit your doctor next, say these exact words. I would like to discuss whether my current dietary guidelines have been updated to reflect age-specific insulin response research published after 2018. That sentence tells your physician that you are informed, engaged, and not willing to accept outdated advice delivered on a printed sheet from 20 years ago. Within 3 days of starting this protocol, most people notice their morning fasting number is slightly more stable. Within 2 weeks, post-breakfast spikes begin to visibly reduce. Within 6 weeks, many of my patients have had conversations with their doctors about reviewing their medication dosages. Not because they ignored their prescriptions, but because their bodies were finally responding the way they were always capable of responding. Ronald still eats 2 eggs every morning. Soft-boiled now, egg first, and his last A1C was the lowest it had been in 6 years. Sylvia sent me a photograph from her granddaughter's birthday party last spring, standing without her mobility aid, smiling in a way she told me she had forgotten how to do. Your body has not failed you. It was simply never given the right instructions. That changes today. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with one person in your life who checks their blood sugar every morning and still cannot understand why the numbers keep fighting them. And tell me in the comments, What is the one moment when you realized your diabetes was affecting your life in a way you never expected? I read every single one. Voiding sugar, following every guideline her endocrinologist gave her, and her A1C was still climbing. She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "I am doing everything right, and my body keeps doing everything wrong." That sentence has stayed with me every single day since. Because Dorothy was not doing anything wrong. She was simply never taught the complete truth about how her aging body processes food. Here is what is actually happening inside your body right now. And I need you to understand this because everything else I am about to tell you depends on it. Your pancreas, the organ responsible for producing insulin and regulating your blood sugar, loses approximately 1% of its functional beta cell capacity every single year after the age of 50. That is not a dramatic, sudden collapse. It is a slow, quiet, invisible decline that your annual blood work rarely captures in time to matter. By the time most people receive a type 2 diabetes diagnosis after 60, they have already lost between 30 and 50% of their peak insulin production capacity. 30 to 50%. And here is the part that should make you genuinely frustrated with the system. The dietary guidelines most doctors hand diabetic patients over 60 were largely developed from studies conducted on adults between 30 and 50 years old. The aging pancreas and the young pancreas do not behave the same way. They never did. And the advice built for one has been handed to the other for decades. This matters for eggs specifically, because eggs interact with your insulin response in a way that is completely dependent on how your digestive system is functioning at the moment you eat them. And after 60, that digestive environment has changed in 3 very specific ways that nobody has ever sat down and explained to you. Until right now. The first thing you need to understand is the cooking method, and I want you to pay very close attention here because this is where most diabetic seniors are making a mistake every single morning without realizing it. Most people believe that an egg is an egg, that scrambled, fried, boiled, or poached, the nutritional impact on your blood sugar is essentially the same. This belief is so widespread that even many general practitioners repeat it without question. But a landmark study published in the journal Nutrients in 2022, involving adults over 65 with type 2 diabetes, found something that genuinely stopped me when I first read it. Eggs cooked in refined oils or butter at high heat produced a measurably higher inflammatory response and a significantly faster glucose spike compared to the same eggs cooked at lower temperatures or prepared without added fats. The oxidized cholesterol created by high heat cooking was identified as the primary driver, not the egg itself, the heat and the fat it was cooked in. I want to tell you about a man named Ronald, 68 years old, retired postal worker, living in Birmingham, Alabama. Ronald had been eating 2 fried eggs every morning for 40 years. When he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at 64, he asked his doctor specifically whether he needed to stop eating eggs. His doctor told him eggs were fine in moderation. So Ronald kept frying them every morning in the same pan with the same vegetable oil, and his fasting blood sugar remained stubbornly elevated despite his medication. For 4 years, Ronald assumed his body was simply resistant to improvement. He had quietly accepted a future of escalating medication doses and declining energy. When Ronald came to my clinic, we made one single change to begin with. We switched his morning eggs from pan-fried in vegetable oil to soft-boiled. Nothing else changed. Within 11 days, his fasting blood sugar readings had dropped an average of 22 points. Within 6 weeks, his morning energy had improved so noticeably that his wife called my office personally to ask what we had done differently. Ronald told me afterward that he felt angry, not at me, but at the years he had lost to advice that was technically correct, but fundamentally incomplete. The second thing most diabetic seniors get completely wrong about eggs is the timing, specifically what they eat alongside the egg and in what order. Most people plate their breakfast the same way they always have: eggs on one side, toast or fruit or juice on the other, and they eat everything together without giving the sequence a second thought. It feels natural, it feels balanced, but a 2019 study published in Diabetes Care, one of the most respected journals in endocrinology, found that the order in which you consume protein versus carbohydrates at the same meal produces a blood sugar difference of up to 37% in type 2 diabetic adults. 37% from sequence alone, not from eliminating any food, not from reducing any portion, simply from changing the order in which you eat what is already on your plate. Here is why this matters so specifically for eggs. When you eat your egg first, before any carbohydrate on that plate, the protein and fat in the egg triggers a release of something called GLP-1, a gut hormone that slows gastric emptying and signals your pancreas to prepare a more measured insulin response. By the time the carbohydrate arrives in your digestive system, your body is already in a far better position to handle it. But when you eat the toast first, or drink the orange juice first, or eat the fruit first, that carbohydrate hits an unprepared system, and the spike happens fast, hard, and in an aging pancreas, incompletely managed.